No, I guess that was a long enough minute. Close enough. Yeah. Feel free to turn off any other cell phones that you may have brought with you. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. There's some new people here tonight, and let me let you know that this is being recorded, and the reason it's being recorded is so that it can go up on the website as audio files that people can tune into that weren't here, or that anybody that wants to pay and listen to it. So, although it's not just casual people won't listen to it, but people that are seriously interested may listen to it, and it's being recorded. So, if you want to say something that you don't want immortalized, don't. Or ask me to turn off the mic, either one. And also, for those of you who are new, this book is where we started. It's called Pointing at the Moon, and this group originally, we did a book study, an AA-style book study, and read the book around the room, a paragraph at a time, and talked about it and asked any questions. And we'll probably repeat that again in January, do that again in January and February for the new people, and also for the people who've done it before, because it will mean quite a bit different stuff to them after playing here for 4 months. But in any event, we don't back up, so if you want to know what we're talking about and want the foundation, that would be a good place to start. And you can go to the website and listen to any of the previous classes, because they're all there. And the first chapter of this book is really about emptying out the teacup, or about the obstacles, or about what's preventing us from getting this new understanding, or what's preventing us from getting the transcendental consciousness. And we've been going through a bunch of what I consider to be fairly practical stuff to look at the stuff that's really tying us to this dream of humanhood. So we've made lists of things that we love, hate, fear, and desire, and I don't know, a few other lists, and looked at our fantasies and the things we're hoping for, and tried to see the ludicrousness of those ideas. And I thought we were going to wrap up a couple of weeks ago, but then this new one came through, and so tonight, what the people who were here before have been asked to do, turn off your car horns too. Tonight, what the people were asked to do, what we asked everybody to do, was look back over your life and see if there's anything in your life, this life or previous lives, if you happen to have information on those, access to those. Is there anything that you have back there or going on now that you feel is sinful, or that you feel guilty about, or that you feel ashamed of, or that you feel remorse about? Because any of those attitudes towards anything are keeping you tied to your humanhood, and they're all nonsense. And I did qualify that just slightly when I use the word sin in this. Yeah, close that. Yeah. When I use the word sin in this context, usually we've already discussed in this group the word sin just means make a mistake. The Aramaic word that gets translated as sin in the New Testament is the word they use for mistake, in exactly the same sense that when an archer shoots at the bullseye and doesn't hit the bullseye, he makes a mistake. They would have to translate that as he sinned. So that's what the word really means in the New Testament. But I'm talking about the Catholic sense of it, about sin, the kind of stuff you really think you're probably going to burn for. So, that kind of stuff, because we're so thoroughly conditioned about sin and about things we ought to feel guilty about or ashamed of or what have you. So, I got some stuff I want to say about that, but let's start sharing first and see who's got what. Anybody find anything you're still hanging on to that you feel guilty about? Are we all guilt-free?
Is anybody not?
Who's got, yeah.
When I thought about it, it was clear to me that I feel guilt and remorse and sinful about inactivity, procrastination, sloth, being paralyzed by fear. All those things sort of fit together to me. And it's time made my humor, though, of course, but I feel very uncomfortable when I'm not being productive in some way, shape, or form. And productive, I don't mean in the workaholic sense because I have a balanced life, but I've been accused of being judgmental. When I point that out in other people. You know what I mean? It really seems to be sort of a big hot button with a lot of people that they don't feel like they're doing enough.
And is it resistance behavior, or do you feel guilty about it?
I mean, it's definitely resistance behavior, but there's another element of it that is what I'm really talking about. It's sort of a deep-seated, what other people would call a moral.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, is the moral stuff, the stuff that we're ashamed of, or we should be doing better about. Yes. Who else has something? Let's hear a few of them first. Yeah.
I feel ashamed of when I was running Sarah Systems in 2001, and I was tied up in well, basically what I did was I spent $750,000 and lost a little over $1 million in stock, and it was such foolish behavior. So I was caught in this fantasy script, and it was almost like I was self-righteous. There were so many things going on, and it turned out materialistically looking at it from that standpoint, it turned out the worst it could have turned out. From a spiritual standpoint, it probably turned out the best it could have turned out, but I still have shame about it. But the good thing is, when I think about that event, I think of how I put myself in. If I'd just done anything a little bit differently, it could have changed the outcome. But then I use contrary behavior that I use the tools, obviously. So if this wouldn't have happened, then maybe I wouldn't have gone to God as hard as I would have, and all the other things. But I still have some element of shame.
At what point could you have done something differently?
Well, if I would have, it was really interesting. That's what I was getting into. When could I have done anything differently? Okay. When?
My question.
Oh, I couldn't have.
Name a point at which you could have done something better.
I couldn't have. Because I did it the best way I thought I could at the time. Yeah.
So why are you ashamed of that?
No, I see the logic, but it's just that so there's an element of. I know. No, I see the logic. It's just that I have. It's just, yeah. There's just some feeling there's just some element of shame, of foolishness. Because the definition of shame that I had was doing something. Or I can't remember what part was being foolish behavior.
Well, if you had a choice, it might have been foolish, right?
Right. Right, foolish. So that takes a little sting off.
Yeah, if you had a choice.
Right.
It might have been foolish.
Yeah, but I didn't have a choice.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Same to you, Andrew. Back to you. You have a choice to do more, or be more industrious, or waste less time, or quit being paralyzed. Yeah.
Mine is my wit, and what I mean by that is not just my wit, but it's basically the things I say, like when I say I pull people's sheets. I'll say, oh, I won't just pull your covers. For instance, some guy was talking about, he's going, well, I don't look at porn. I go, yeah, you do. He goes, no, I really don't. I go, look, you do look at porn, just admit it. And then he got really mad. No, I don't. And he walked away, and I go, dude, you would not be mad at me right now, dude. And so when I'm doing stuff like that, You know, the only reason I say that is because I'm a perv. I'll say it. And I feel kind of ashamed sometimes when I point things out like that about people, or I'll say something mean, like for instance, this girl got a new camera phone. I said, have you taken any pictures? And she goes, well, I took a picture of my ass. And then what I wanted to say is, I didn't know they came with wide angle lenses. but I
did say that in your shame. Well, great luck.
But it would be things like that, and so I'm catching. Lee knows about this. I make check marks of all my little remarks I make in the AA meetings now, and I just sit there throughout the whole meeting talking smack about people. So.
And you think you can do any differently?
Oh yeah.
You really think you have a choice about that?
I think that I can. Yeah, I think I can grow out of that. But if I can
In the moment.
Not in that moment.
No, I don't doubt that any of us can change. That's not what I'm saying. No doubt we will change just as a result of thinking about it tonight. I'm talking about in the moment when you talk smack to somebody. Do you think you have an alternative?
No, there's absolutely nothing, because if you're going to predetermination, there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. But at least I'm aware of it.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about going into predetermination. We don't have to even address that. I'm talking about, do you think you had a choice, or are you driven by, are you in fact doing the thing that you think serves you best in the moment? You or your kid, or your conditioning, or your fears, or your resistance behaviors, or your what have you?
I don't know. That sounds right.
I doubt that there's a streak of maliciousness in you that's looking for opportunities to do that. I think if you look at it, you will find that you don't really have a choice about it.
Not right now.
Right now, that's what we're talking about here.
My character.
Can you say that again, that sentence you just said? To give a choice. Are you doing the best that you're, what was that?
No, I'm suspicious that we're all doing the best we can to serve whatever our immediate goal is, which may well be a result of conditioning. Undoubtedly, it's a result of our concepts, or it may be a result of our conditioning, or a result of the way we've been taught things should be by the parents or what have you, or it may be forced on us by our resistance behaviors, or it may be forced on us by our fantasy script. There's 100 things that are driving us, and I'm saying that the action is the result of the factors that are driving us, rather than the choice to do something shameful, to be malicious. If he was being malicious, intentionally being malicious, that would be, even then, the same argument would apply. But only in that case could we really consider the possibility of feeling any guilt about it. Yeah. You can't feel guilty about something if you can't do better. If you couldn't have done better, how could you feel guilty about it? I guess you could feel guilty about it for being so stupid that you couldn't do better, right? But if you were so stupid that you couldn't do better, why weren't you smart? Well, because you weren't presented with the information. Was it the intentional stupidity? No, it was lack of, so you see, it just goes back and back. It wasn't intentional. Everything we do is our best choice based on our current concepts and our current information and our current support and our current amount of kid we have in gear and our current amount of script we have in gear. And
what about self-destructive behavior? You have the information and you know that you shouldn't do something, or it should, but you have the information and you know that it's going to be something that's not good for yourself, or you just do it anyways.
Well, I would say that the reason that you do it is stronger than the reason that you don't do it, and one may be conscious and the other one may be unconscious. A compulsion or an addiction is doing something you don't want to do. not being able to not do something you don't want to do, okay? So I would say that whatever it is that you're doing under those circumstances, you're addicted to, for some reason. Yeah, probably it's resistance behavior or something like that. I mean, we all want to be happy. Whatever that means to us, and whatever that looks like to us. The guy that robs the bank is robbing the bank so he can be happy. The guy that kills somebody is to get him out of his life so he can be happy. Right? Right? I mean, we're all trying to be happy. We're all doing the best we can to be happy, given our current information. But yeah, please.
It seems to me that remorse you talked about and shame and all comes in hindsight. Even if hindsight is within moments after it has happened, and then I get a judgment of, oh, geez, I could have done that better.
Sure.
The result I got wasn't what I wanted. Even if the hindsight is within moments, the judgment comes based on the hindsight.
Oh, yeah. There's all judgment. I mean, it's remorse. It's not morse.
Yeah.
It's remorse. There's a reason for the re. Sure. Yeah, we have to look back at ourselves and judge. I mean, if you're not thinking, you're not guilty. You're not ashamed. You're not ashamed. You're not in remorse. If you're not thinking, there ain't nothing going on but bliss. Yeah, it takes. Oh yeah. It takes judgment to bring up any of those things. Of course, it can be somebody else's judgment that you're conditioned into is the usual problem. Usually our church or our mother has conditioned us to feeling bad about everything that's fun. Yeah? And they try.
I listed, oh, sorry. I put, like, my definition of sin was like, being bad. Being bad. And my biggest things that I feel remorseful about are behaving insensitively, hurting other people, being mean to my kids, and, like, hurting other people's feelings.
Okay, now, in those moments, could you be more sensitive? Do you know how to turn up your sensitivity in the moment? Having just judged yourself insensitive, could you have been more sensitive in that moment?
In the prior moment?
Yeah, in that moment that you feel you were, where you would have liked to have been more sensitive.
Apparently not.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, because that would have made you more happy, right? Yeah. So obviously you couldn't do it. And what were the other? We go right down the list. You know, all of those. There's no difference there. When you're angry with your kid, it's because he made you powerless, and the reason he made you powerless is because you didn't know how to not be powerless in that moment. Okay.
But what if you say, "Man, I'm not going to say it. Fuck it," and then you just say it. So you already know that you don't want to say it, but you just do it anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the whole theory of, like, I'm getting back into predetermination, but there are times when I say...
Let's not worry about that.
Okay, I know.
I don't even want to go play
But
there.
I'm not talking about but I know I'm getting into that, but I'm saying, I know I don't want to say it,
Mm-hmm.
so what you're saying is, I can do better, and I know it, and I do it anyhow.
Yep, which means you couldn't do better, because you wanted to not do it. And you didn't. That's my point.
But I'm getting into, like, the thought.
I'm saying it's a resistance behavior, undoubtedly. If you do that, it's a resistance behavior. Your kid needs to be something or other. Undoubtedly, it's
Because I know a lot of
it's
people
driving
here.
you. Often we have a head who's telling us one thing and a kid who's telling us the other thing, and the kid wins.
Right. There's 30% of you that doesn't want to say it, and the other 70% wants to.
But the 30% is vocal and intellectual and up in your head saying whatever it wants to say, and being rational, and the 70% is often repressed and is running the show. Right? You're the next, Cynthia.
I was just had some examples to share. and you know, a lot of them I've already heard. I can see where, you know, it's like, what's the point? But
The point is so we can all look and see where we're all at. You know, the point is to share.
okay, so guilt, not doing enough to run my business, not wanting to devote the time and energy necessary for it to run smoothly. That's one. It's another guilt, not being 100% honest in all areas of my life. And then 3, which some people, similar things, the way that I treat others and overreacting is what I have for guilt. And then remorse is the same type of thing over some of the choices I've made, and being mean, short, snappy, and reacting with emotion, which is all script towards others.
Sure, yeah, script. I mean, you would never do that if you had a choice, would you?
No. And that's some of the clarity I've gotten when I've gotten in moments, in those tiny little moments when I've gotten quiet, and some of the biggest revelations I had is been that full acceptance that there's, you know, just that's, you know, that I can't get to that place most often with myself, but I've had those little moments of clarity of that, you know, that's already there, you know, and I know that, but I forget that.
But the point is that with respect to guilt and remorse and that kind of stuff, in every one of those cases, and especially given the information you have now, having done the script work and everything, if you could have not gone into script, you would have chosen not to, right?
So I was powerless.
So it's very clear to me that you're doing the best you can. You know, and how can anybody who's doing the very best they can be ashamed of it or be guilty of anything? You know, you're guilty. What you're guilty of is doing the very best you can. You know, how can we be ashamed of doing the best we can, or guilty of what we're doing the best we can, or having remorse for doing the best we can? Or be damned to eternal hell for doing the best we can, which is really a tough one.
So it's a lot of this condition, like the only answer I can say is that it's conditioned that in my mind that I should somehow be different no matter what I do.
Absolutely. That was the big word, should. Welcome to universal parent. You should be better. You know, the 2 great lies. 1 is I'm not good enough, and 2, I can do something about it, you know. I should be better.
So even if some of these things you're not doing because of resistance behaviors, it's still that you're doing, if you thought if you could do better, then you would, regardless if it's script or resistance behaviors or whatever.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could stop being in script forever right now, and integrate your kid right now, and get rid of all your false beliefs right now, and get rid of all your fears right now, and move into the 4th dimension. And of course, you have to do all that shit before you can move into the 4th dimension.
Absolutely.
And if you did that, then there would be no reason for any sort of sin error. There would be no behaviors that you would possibly have any of those judgments on. So the fact is that the fact that you're doing things that you label as sinful or shameful or guiltful, you know, the fact that you're still doing them is clearly indicates that you can't not yet. You haven't seen it clearly enough to give it up yet.
But the behaviors...
And you're conditioned to label that as sinful or guilty, or you should be doing this. Same as Andrew with his, should be working hard, you should be trying. Try harder. That's human condition.
I want to work harder to make Cynthia's business a success now.
Where's the easy button?
Yeah. Try harder. Work harder. Yeah.
I just wanted to share an interesting experience I had with this, because I really didn't have very much of a list, because I've just had some miracles happen in this area and just done a lot of work. But I'm thinking, hearing people talk, that the concepts that I hold, the beliefs I have about certain things, are what kind of run this stuff lots of times, of why I would have felt guilty, or somebody told me you should feel guilty about that or something. But so Lee and I were talking, and I had one incident over the past 20 years of my life that just kept coming up for me just every so often, and it had to do with when the boy's father started using drugs when I was 13 years sober. I moved out with the boys, and we had this really crazy next door neighbor, and he called social services on me and said I had been screaming at my kids. And so over the years, that's come up every so often, and I felt like, wow, I hope I didn't really destroy them. I mean, they're not destroyed, but, it just these fleeting So Lee and I talked the other night, and he goes, well, there's things in your life that you wish you would have done differently and stuff, but I decided I was going to ask my boys about it. I wanted to get the story, and you know what? They were like this.
What?
They had a whole totally different picture of this entire thing. In fact, my older son said if he ever found the guy who kicked the shit out of him, that I had been walking around for 10 years even carrying that thought anywhere. And it's not a thought I carry very often. It just comes up like so often. And I saw that the belief I had about what happened wasn't even true, wasn't even reality. Somebody had said something or done something, and I grabbed onto it, and then I probably grabbed onto this universal truth about the way you should treat your kids, and somewhere stored that back into my mind so it could roll over every so often. And it was just amazing to me. And then it just went. I mean, it was just really cool. But it was just amazing to me how it was all just based on a lie or a false belief.
Okay, so now that you're free of that,
Yeah.
do you think he should feel ashamed for calling the social services on you when it wasn't true?
No, not at all. He was a drunk doing the best he could. I mean, I totally know that. Yeah.
Look at Greg and then Sean.
When I didn't do this because I didn't know, but as soon as I started to think about it, I thought about my kids, and I instantly had that just stab, and I could relate to everything you said. And then while I was going over the self-beat in my head about, I'm relatively happy with the way that I interact with my children, but I'm not completely happy with the way I interact with my significant other in front of my children. And then when I was thinking about it, I thought about my mom and about how I've had all this resentment and judgment on her for all these years. And I thought, wait a minute, if I can't control it, and I've had, 10 times the therapy and 10 times the AA and all this stuff, I thought in that moment, I went, wow. It's making my hair stand up. It's like she had no...
Not a chance, didn't have a prick.
And that universal belief of she should have done it better, she should have done it better, she should have been there more, and she should have not done drugs and all that stuff.
And none of this is about that we wouldn't have liked to have done things better. There are a lot of things I've done that were really stupid. And I would rather just not have to even think back on that. I decided that wasn't in the memory bank, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about remorse, guilt. What did you have, Sean?
Well, I'm confused. So I'm assuming then is I have this false belief that my behaviors are inappropriate, and I sponsor someone that sleeps with a lot of people, and I say the only reason you just think there's something wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with it. You just have the false belief that there's something wrong because you're in so many Christian churches.
Yeah.
But so then I can still have the behavior, but not have the drama, not have the opinion of I'm a loser. And then, but as I get to a higher level of consciousness, if it's an inappropriate behavior, if it's not loving behavior, it'll go away.
It'll go away, yeah. But we're not talking about behaviors here. We're talking about judging our behaviors.
Right.
Judging our own behaviors and other people's, of course. And it's a deal. If I don't have myself as always doing the best I can, then I don't have you as always doing the best that you can. It's a package deal. And if I do have myself as always doing the best I can, then I have to have you as always doing the best you can. It's a package deal. So let's look at let's come back and do some more. But let's do the global picture. In the book we read years ago, seems like, we talked about how form is always created ignorant in sleep, okay? And how it grows. So the reality is that human consciousness got dumped here in the world, and there was no instruction book, and no toolkit, and nobody knew how to grow spiritually, and nobody knew what spiritually meant. And nobody knew what God was, and nobody knew what love was, and nobody knew what fear and guilt and remorse were. Nobody knew what any of that stuff was, okay? And here we are. And get this, we're out there growing spirit. We started this path, okay? And there's no instruction book. And there's only one way we can grow. trial and error, okay? And we try and we sin in the sense of making mistakes, and we try and we make mistakes, and we try and we make mistakes. And it goes on, and slowly we learn things that don't work and stop doing them. And you see that eventually, all the stuff, and we're still very much in that process, we're not learning that all the behaviors based in the fears that underlie our scripts don't work. Slowly, we're discovering what doesn't work, but we very seldom find out, very seldom grow spiritually through reason. What did Mrs. Eddy say? It's either through science or suffering that we grow spiritually. By science, she means understanding. And the reality is, there was no science for your first 100,000 years. There was just suffering. And there's still very little science until you get to a class like this, okay? So think about, everybody is out there just making mistakes and learning lessons, okay? And learning their next lesson, okay? And get that picture and see if that isn't true for you. Is that what look at any point in your life, at anything in your life, and see if you weren't in fact just learning your next lesson, weren't you? And if you have something you're ashamed of, wasn't that just your next lesson? And what you learned is, well, this behavior doesn't work. Wasn't that a successful step to take on that lesson? And you may have encountered it again and tried that again and got the lesson. Well, this behavior still doesn't work. But you see, it's all just the next lesson, the next spiritual lesson. It's back to the spiritual gymnasium, the spiritual university that we're all playing. And we never, all of those things were because we were ignorant, unsupported, and driven by human consciousness, which is fear-based and full of shoulds and statements of inadequacy. So, it's all based in fear, ignorance, and lack of support, and lack of instructions. Everything. The human path is based in fear, lack of support, lack of it's really but the Leelaa, the play that we're in, that we've been in for all this time, is really a diabolical play, And remember that the actors in the play didn't write the play. Okay? So once again, where is there anything to feel guilty about? Do you see what I'm saying? Are you getting this? It's just the Leelaa. And that's the way the play is written. The play is written, if we want to phrase it this way, the way God set it up, apparently, is for us to grow spiritually by trying and discovering one by one everything that doesn't work. And I don't see how we can have any shame or guilt or remorse or sense of sin about any of that. So now let's list it some more. If you've got others who haven't shared their list, let's look at them from that viewpoint, though, and see if you can see that. See if you can see that it was a lesson. Okay, who's got some more?
Oh, I've got mine. This feels so good to hear.
Good. That's the purpose. That's why we're here. Sit out. This is what's keeping us tied to our humanhood.
One whole big thing, one whole big category of remorse for me is top of the list. It's self-destructive compulsions, and then also things that hurt other people. But it's all, a lot of it is sort of like, if it's before I got sober, oh well, I believe that I was doing the best I could, and then all of a sudden it sounds crazy to me, but now that I'm sober, how can I still ever make a mistake? Or how can I, you know what I mean? But now I know better, kind of, you know, it is what I've had in my head.
What information did you get because when you became sober?
Well, if you have somebody, well, I mean, I think the steps, you know, and I do, I mean, I think I have less ignorance now than then, you know.
And your behavior is probably considerably better, considerably less instructive. All right, so progress happens. Certainly working the steps and doing the AA program is really progressive.
Yeah.
And it says somewhere in there about progress, not perfection. But except for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I guess I've had it in my head somehow that, you know, now, I mean, I can't think of a way that it doesn't sound crazy now, but it somehow sounded not crazy to me. You know what I mean? I really, it really is pretty painful, you know.
Yeah, it's very painful. And it's conditioned and it's keeping you locked in, and it should sound pretty silly if you see it clearly. That means that you're seeing clearly now what I was saying.
And everything for me that's compulsive has changed after I thought it needed to change.
Yeah. And everything that you're doing compulsive is a resistance behavior. These non-self-serving compulsions are resistance behaviors. And the operative word in resistance behavior is powerless over doing resistance behaviors. This also, by the way, brings to the forefront why it's a three-legged stool, why just reading the book isn't going to get the work done. It also takes the script work and the kid work. Well, please.
I still have some guilt. It's gotten a lot better though about. I know it's a supply thing, but buying things. Like I went out to lunch and I felt guilty. I was going out to lunch with some friends. I decided not to listen to that. I get the most expensive thing on the menu, but that just still comes up to me sometimes. Just because, like, when I make a schedule a massage, there's a little bit of guilt that comes up. I can talk myself through it now, but yeah. Or my other thing is, which we've kind of just talked about.
Why should you feel guilty about spending money on yourself?
Well, I know it's the whole, not enough thing. I guess I shouldn't be doing this because I think somewhere that I don't have enough money.
Mm-hmm. And you feel guilty about that, about that thought. I guess you haven't had enough lessons is all we can say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no guilt there either. I mean, either you see clearly, well, you can't see clearly supply until you've demonstrated it.
Until when?
Until you've demonstrated it. So the question is, that you think you should be, you think you should see, that will leave you when you see it clearly, okay?
Yeah.
And the fact that it hasn't left you means that you don't see it clearly. What should you have done to enable yourself to have seen it more clearly sooner?
More spiritual self. Nothing. I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, you probably should have got more spiritual adult gear. Why was it that you should
So I can kind of relate to that, and I've been on a
I
quest.
think we all can.
But I've been on these quests my whole life, and I've had these sentences: only if I did this, only if I made more money. And I found that, like, for example, right now, when I was doing all this work last year, I was going, why isn't this paying off for me? I'm doing everything right, and I'm still poor. And now I'm on the other side of that, and I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life, and I still don't feel any different at all.
We haven't changed.
Yeah, and that's the classic. It's like the hole is not quite as big as it used to be, but that shit still just falls right through the hole.
Well, if you're making more money, you've changed something in your consciousness, but you still have your beliefs about it.
What has changed in my consciousness is I no longer care. I don't care about the money. Where I did before it was so important, and now I just don't care.
So what's the whole?
The whole is I'm thinking that something is going to make me feel whole, other than something outside of me is going to make me feel whole.
Okay.
And I've been on that quest for so long, you know.
Sure.
And it still comes up, you know, snake eyes. It's like, oh, more money now.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's the fantasy that you might want to go listen to some of the classes we've done already, because that's the fantasy work that we did. The fantasy is something's going to come along and fix us.
Well, we forget. I mean, it's like I did a lot of that script work. I remember all that. It's like, it goes out the window if you don't practice it.
Yeah.
What's the 5-year line? 5 years from now.
Oh, when I tell people,
Yeah.
that they don't want to hear.
Right. Tell Greg.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you take a job or which job you take, which house you buy or live in or don't buy or don't live in, which lady you marry or don't marry, which kid you have or don't have, which car you buy or don't buy. Any decision that you're working on right now will have absolutely no effect on how you feel about yourself in 5 years.
What happens?
Except the decision to do more spiritual work.
What about if you feel guilt, shame, remorse about those decisions you made from 5 years?
You'll still feel guilt in 5 years if you don't do spiritual work. The only thing that will have any effect on how you feel about yourself 5 years from now is the spiritual work you do now.
It's funny that you picked the 5-year thing, because in many, I don't know, at work, what's your 5-year goal? What's your 5-year plan? It's always, what's your 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Financially, in all these kind of aspects, it's interesting that society pushes that 5-year plan, and you're saying...
What I'm saying is all 5-year plans are absolutely irrelevant as far as with respect to how you feel about yourself in 5 years. And the other thing that you might find in the book too is that, you have to remember the basic axiom that my experience is the reflection of the content of my own consciousness. Immediately and perfectly and right now. So everything I see out there is the effect of my consciousness. Okay? And effects can't be causes. So there are no sources out there. You can't get anything from anybody, anywhere, ever. Or from anything, anywhere, ever. Because what you're seeing is what you believe. So it's, that's when you may as well start working on giving up. Because it ain't going to come out good. So then Barbara, when she was talking about all this stuff, goes into a long thing about forgiveness and forgiveness in world work, and you're forgiven before you even make the mistake, and yada, yada, yada. And what I see about that is the same thing that we see in step 4 of the script work. What I want you to see is that there never was anything to forgive anybody for ever. If you can see that everybody's doing the best they can, then there never is anything to forgive anybody for. Because you can't hold anybody in need of forgiveness if they're doing the best they can. If I'm doing the best I can, I don't need, if you're doing the best you can, you don't need forgiveness because you're doing the best you can. You get it? So there's no forgiveness going on anywhere. There's no need for forgiveness going on anywhere. Where Barbara talks about the world work of forgiving the world, because and the world badly needs forgiveness, they think, because the world is very much in pain due to their sin, guilt, shame, and remorse, okay? There's a great deal of that out there. And they really need to be forgiven. And that's what she's talking about doing forgiveness as your world work. But I think, that forgiveness, just isn't the right thing. The thing to do is to pour into human consciousness your awareness that everybody's always doing the best they can and has always been doing the best they can, and that we're all just out in this trial and error lesson plan in the spiritual gymnasium. And dumping that into human consciousness has to be is the only work I can do.
Yeah, no, I was just going to point out, I noticed that, you talk about that fourth step, the realization and the forgiveness, like what just happened for Greg, was he had the realization of the new information coming in about his mom, and just like, boom, gone so quickly.
It's all seeing it. It's all, the whole thing we're trying to do ever is just see it clearly. What did Barbara say? You come to a class and you let it, and you just hear it, and then you let it settle down and settle down and settle down and settle down to the point where it works. And then you patiently, and you don't think about it. You let this stuff in and you just hear it and let it sink down to wherever the hell it's going. I like to think it goes to where the glitch comes from, okay? So you let it sink down to your glitch. And then you just patiently let it sit there. Okay? You don't go investigate it. You don't pull it up to see how it's doing. Just let it sit there until it suddenly, shines like a light from you. And then it's yours, then you've realized it, and then it goes away. But the only constructive thing you had to do was see it or hear it. If you see it clearly, that's your part. And then it sinks down and it does its thing.
So if, say, I had an epiphany and from this day forward, I based the decisions that I made on solely being able to do more spiritual work for the next 5 years, and every decision that I made was based upon that premise, my chances are better 5 years from now if I was to base my choices on something different.
Either that or you starve to death because you wouldn't make any money. No, that may not be a practical solution, but if you spend some reasonable amount of time every day on spiritual work, that will be the thing that has an effect on how you feel in 5 years. Whereas if you spend that same time making your decisions about whether you're going to buy this house or that house, it won't have any effect.
Okay, so that was a perfect example. Like we were going to sell our house and we decided not to because we wanted to make that little bit of extra money. Mm-hmm. But
see, that doesn't happen.
Selling the house was going to allow me to do some spiritual work a lot sooner than not selling the house. Yep. Something that's some time that I wanted.
I've told lots of people who are looking at career things and job things, I always tell people that your ideal job is the one that pays you enough money to allow you to meet your needs and live here in the area, live where you want to live and live comfortably, and which takes the least amount of your time and uses the least amount of your energy and causes you the least amount of anxiety and stress. In other words, you want to, your career path should be to do as little work as possible while living the way you want to live so that you'll have as much energy and time available to pursue your work. Your God script or your spiritual work or meditation or whatever you have, and nothing else makes sense. Give up the career path.
I've heard that described as the percentage of your life's energy that you want to spend in a day, and I had it written on my whiteboard at work so that I could see it. 55%, that's how much I'm going to spend at work. I had that for months and months and months written up, just so that I could see it and go, oh yeah, I don't have to spend 100% of my life's energy here today.
My board says 0%.
I'm sure.
Even being at work, I mean, it's really where your consciousness is, because, you can sit at work and almost, it just kind of flows, and you're not like in anxiety. It's just you're in this creative flow, listening to a satsang or
I
something.
don't have any problem with your being in God's script.
Yeah.
But not everybody when they're at work feels that way, doesn't it?
No.
People,
All I'm saying is find the job that allows you to meet your needs and live comfortably so that you are free to do your spiritual pursuits. And if your spiritual pursuits are to go in and work, that's fine. If that's your God script, I don't have any idea how it ought to look. But I'm saying that the time spent on spiritual stuff is the time that will have an effect on how you feel about yourself in 5 years. And in fact, every belief you change in your consciousness will change the picture right now because it's the reflection right now.
No, what I'm saying is you can't really separate work sometimes from spirituality, because work is spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Can be.
Yeah.
Can be.
Because walking in, I gain a lot of my work that I do is trying to change my consciousness and how I look at work.
Oh yeah, you can work out anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can work out spiritually. You can work out on the spiritual gymnasium any place you choose to.
Because it's like every day when I go to work, I really try to change my concepts of how I am with work.
And when you have your God script and you're doing whatever it is that you're really here to do, you're going to work your butt off.
Because this weekend, I wanted to work this weekend, and I forced myself not to work and meditate and do all this stuff because my resistance behavior wanted to kick in.
If you can get the idea, if you're in your God script and you're really doing what you're here to do, can you get the idea that you may really work your butt off, but it's effortless?
Yes.
Okay? That's the clue, when it's effortless. Although it may be taking a lot of time and it may be exhausting, but it's effortless.
Like Joel.
Yeah. Those are great examples. Oh, ridiculous.
So effortless and exhausted are two different things, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just heard that.
Stress.
It made really a lot of sense to me.
Hey, Lee, when you said there never was anything to forgive anybody for, it made me think of the non-negotiable of expectations and the lines that there's, like on the spiritual level, there's no valid expectations. So would you tie those together? Like if there's no valid expectation, does that mean the same thing as saying there's never anything to forgive anybody for? Because it's based on the error of having some expectation of this person. Like that my mother was supposed to play some role for me, or...
Yeah, but it's not limited to expectations. It's
Just one class.
I'm sorry?
This is one class.
Yeah, that's one example of it, but certainly, anything that you think requires forgiving, whether you expected them to behave different, or whether you just have a conditioned belief that they should be different, or that they should do better, or, usually it's that we're conditioned by our society to expect perfection of everybody. Like somebody said, yeah.
There was I don't know if you want to call it a class, but it was with you and Dulcie and Sherry a few years ago, and I was doing a lot of meditation then, and we talked about going vertical and horizontal. And so I did that for like 2 weeks, the vertical thing, and just watching everyone vertical, and then it was like snapshots. And it was that was probably the best 2 weeks of my whole non-life that I've ever had. And now it's like when I'm listening to this, it's all this theory, and Some of the things that I'm finding difficult, I mean, with this is the effortlessness and the thought and the mind and the what is and all of that, and then I'm still stuck in and you know, I listen to Mike talking about his work and this and that and the other and the spiritual, all the spiritual stuff, but I just don't get the fact that we're all doing the best we can. And it comes back to the question I asked 3 weeks ago, then why do we even come to this class?
Because it's the best you can.
And then hope has been completely abandoned. So now I'm sitting here hopeless.
Good. Progress. That's why you came to the class. To get hopeless. Because it was time. And emptying out is the necessary step before the pouring in. But emptying out isn't fun, because you wind up with an empty cup. Never fun. Always the problem. And you can't pour it in before you empty out. So there's always these gaps, these dark nights of the soul type thing. When you give up what is no longer working for you, so that you can discover the next thing that you have to learn.
So, because I've noticed that, like, a lot, since we started looking at a lot of these things, in my writing, and just seeing how I'm feeling in certain areas, feeling very hopeless. So you're saying this emptying out period, you use the word hopeless, and you're saying that might be part of the experience of looking at all this stuff.
Well, it's a necessary step. You can't get the new concepts until the old ones are gone. You can't get the new beliefs until the old ones are gone. It's always going to be emptying out. And that's the funny thing, Don. We're going to move on to chapter 2 tonight, but what we've been doing for the past 6 weeks, I guess, is all chapter 1 stuff, emptying out. Yeah.
Isn't for self-forgiveness, we're talking about we don't need to forgive, but isn't self-forgiveness part of the emptying out? And I know a lot of us here are linked to 12 steps. That's kind of the process. You look at what you conceive as mistakes, and then you forgive yourself for it, and then isn't that somewhat necessary in some?
In 3D sense, but what I'm pointing out is that the truth is that there was nothing to forgive yourself for, that you were doing the best you could then.
But in order to get to that point, you need to start at the beginning.
We work the steps first.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is a good word, and people do need forgiveness. Like I said, people out there really need forgiveness, and you need to forgive yourself. I mean, in a very immediate sense, you really need to work a 4th step and dump some of that shit so you don't have to drink over it. Right? I mean, that's the problem right there. The problem is getting that powder keg out of you so that you don't have to drink over it. And forgiving yourself and forgiving others and all that sort of stuff is a very freeing step, but now we're going a whole step beyond that. Because we're not trying to dump out now the painful stuff that we drank over. What we're trying to dump out now is the stuff that's tying us to the belief that we're even here, that we have a body, that we have a mind, that we're in, that this dream is real. We're trying to dump out that. This class has been about the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or however long I've been doing it now, is about what's tying us to this 3D illusion, what's keeping us tied to human consciousness, rather than allowing us to get into God consciousness, I guess is a good way to say it. We're all conversing on what we mean by 3D and 4D, the wrong words anyway. But if we're aligned with human consciousness, life is suffering. That was Buddha's first noble truth. Life is suffering. And what he means is being human is suffering. And that's because all of human activity is based in fear. And if you're in transcendental consciousness or God consciousness or spiritual adult, then life is blissful. And there's no struggle. And all your activity is based in love. And so we're trying to, and you can't get into spiritual consciousness, transcendental consciousness, until you can't take any of this shit in there with you. Okay? So we're identifying the shit so that we can leave it outside. That's what this is all about. And that's the list. You really probably do want to go look at the list of things you love and hate and fear and desire and think are going to rescue you, and your fantasies and your hopes and all that sort of stuff. And now the last thing that you want to get rid of is everything that you are ashamed of or guilty about or remorseful, because that's just tying you here and guaranteeing you're going to make a mistake again. Because to feel guilty about doing something is keeping that something in my consciousness. I'm holding it here. I've got it grabbed in my claw. I feel guilty about that, you know, and you can't get away. So that's what that's all about.
So is it necessary to, if we're doing the best we can do, is it necessary to apologize? And I find a lot of times I apologize out of fear, feeling guilty, rather than out of, sometimes out of love. I'm wondering if there's a difference in an apology.
Sure, apology can be out of fear, and it can be a
fear of shame.
It can be a strict thing, or it can be out of love. I mean, apologizing to somebody is a very loving thing to do. I mean, admitting your mistake and acknowledging your mistake. We're not talking about the fact that we're not saying we don't make mistakes. I mean, we acknowledge the fact that there were behaviors that we could have done that were better had we had better information at the moment. Had I been more sensitive to your situation, I would have behaved entirely differently. Okay? But the fact is that I was locked into my pea brain, and I was over here, and I was absolutely insensitive to the situation. And if I'm totally insensitive to you, and find that I acted out of fear rather than love, hopefully I would apologize for doing that and tell you that I had done that. And please understand that was all me, and I was locked into my concepts or somewhat. I was fucked up.
So without remorse or regret, how would you know, and how would you change your behavior? Because
it was ineffective.
But what if it's not ineffective? That's my point. If your judgment doesn't come from, is your values or your moral, is it moral imperative? Are you thinking what affects me in a negative way? Because if I'm here, I'm not thinking of you, I don't know what affected you in a negative way, and therefore I don't change my behavior. So unless I am open to the fact that my behavior affects other people, and my moral position comes from one of how I can't will myself to do or have anything that I can't will for everybody else, then
my behavior, my goal in my behavior is to have it all come from love rather than fear. Okay? That's the only moral imperative that I understand, is that I want to operate from love rather than from fear. And in the case we were talking about, if I see her burst into tears, I suspect that I was insensitive over here somewhere, and probably not coming from love.
So once again, lack of knowledge. If I didn't know that, then it would be lack of knowledge that kept me from changing my behavior, and therefore still, of course, guilt.
Or lack of presence. I might just have not been present, okay? But I don't know how to be present when I'm not present. Okay? I mean, I would like to always be present. I would like to always be here now. And sometimes I'm just not. Okay? And in that moment, I may be insensitive. And I don't feel guilty about that because I couldn't have done it any differently. And I don't feel guilty about the fact that you burst into tears because I couldn't have done it any differently and you couldn't have done it any differently. Nonetheless, I really would rather I had been present and sensitive and come from love and you hadn't burst into tears. And so I'm likely to pour a little oil on the thing, and apologize and acknowledge my mistake and move on. But if I feel guilty about it, I'm guaranteed to repeat it.
So when
there's no gain in being guilty or remorseful or labeling it good or bad or being ashamed of it. The fact is that it was an error. It was a sin in the Aramaic sense. It was a mistake. The bullet just didn't quite hit the bullseye. There it is out in the 5 ring, instead of in the center.
Yeah, I had a thing happen the other day. It was really interesting because it was exactly this thing. I said something that wasn't very sensitive to this person that's taking a class of mine. And that night I thought about it, and I knew that I probably should clean that up. I had a tool, and I was conscious enough of what had happened. I didn't feel guilty, but I knew tomorrow I should confront her. And it ended up that it hadn't really bothered her at all, but I needed to make that really clear at my level. And it was done.
It's like, that wasn't right, and it doesn't make it good or bad, but that wasn't best behavior.
Yeah. It was done.
So we operate from there. Let's not go too long. We're done with our lists of obstructions. And now let's move into practice of getting rid of some of these, not of getting rid of our obstructions. And don't think you're done until all your lists are empty. Okay? But I want to introduce a flashcard now. Barbara used to use flashcards with her group, and they're very useful tools. We all work on the same flashcard. There's 20, 25 of us here, so if we're all working on the same flashcard, that means that it will be really very much in the consciousness, and the fact that we're all working on it will make it much more effective than if we're trying to work on this sort of stuff individually. And first of all, let me say what a flashcard is. It's an intellectual exercise. Okay? It's not a method. It's not a mantra. It's not an affirmation. It has no power at all. It's absolutely ineffective in doing anything except deprogramming you. So what you do is you drag it out to decondition yourself. The only purpose of flashcards is to decondition yourself. And what you do is you use it as often as you possibly can. And the game we get to play is that I get to know what the flashcard is the week before you do, and so I get to use it all week so that I get to find out how much trouble you get into using it. And I started on this one 3 weeks ago, and it's really very funny what's happened to me in 3 weeks. So the flashcard is, everything I see is carnal mind. Okay? And you can play with the word carnal mind a little bit because you guys don't have the Christian Science background, but carnal mind means the same thing as world mind, means the same thing as human consciousness, means the same thing as the devil, means the same thing as any of those. And it really means the same thing as hypnosis. You might want to find the word that pleases you. I really thought about it, and I really like the word carnal mind because carnal means meat. You know, and I think the idea of the meat mind, the human mind, the body mind, I mean, human mind and meat mind. I like the idea of meat mind, so I'm going to continue to say carnal mind here, but you can pick the word that's there. But everything that confronts you, yeah, it's like you wrote this on a little card and kept it in your shirt pocket, you know, and whenever anything confronts you, you pull out your flashcard and read it. Not with the sense that you're going to do anything about that, but with the sense that you're going to see it more clearly. And the answer is, oh, that's just carnal mind. You know, everything I see, that's just carnal mind. Oh, that's carnal mind. Oh, that's carnal mind. I'm looking at this class, and right now I'm aware that I'm looking at carnal mind. I'm looking at our human concepts of our bodies. And I'm looking at our human concepts of people that need to be in a class, and human concepts of people that need to do work.
It's one of the lessons like in Course in Miracles. Everything I see is the past.
So everything I see is carnal mind is the flashcard. And we'll work on deprogramming for a few weeks now and see what sort of results this has. And see what it does. So play with it, work with it, drag it out, and I hope we have some good experiences with it in 2 weeks or next week when we come back. Clear? Did you get what it is? We'll get more experience with it because we've never done one of these before here.
Should we actually write it on a card or just like think about it?
I write it on a card. Carry it with me.
And try to be aware of as much as possible and why it's
the first day you may not remember it at all, so you got to work with it. Timer. Practice, yeah. Take your timer out, practice it. Remember using it as often as you can.
I can write on my whiteboard. What are cardinals?
Fine.
You can have it as your screensaver.
Yeah. Everything I CM.
So I guess I always, because I've actually worked with that same thing, but I guess I've always tried it more when I'm seeing lapse in disease, kind of with some of the.
No, sunsets.
So I never thought, I don't think that I'm seeing something that's happening, but I never thought of the things that I perceive as good or pleasant or whatever.
Everything I see is carnal mind. Everything I see is a human concept of the reality. Everything I see is an image in mind somewhere on its stage from being born ignorant and asleep to its stage of pure spirit. The birds and the cockroaches and the cats and the kittens.
Is it perception rather than something tangible? This carnal mind?
Carnal mind is everything that you see through any of your five senses.
So it could be something I could touch and hold.
Carnal mind. Carnal mind. Everything I touch, everything I see is carnal mind. That's all we're working on this week, is see.
So you said some funny things have happened to you, can you give me an example?
Well, I started on it 3 weeks ago, and 2 days after I started on it, I tripped on the last step on the steps going down the stairs with Dulcie, and cracked my forearm.
Oh, my God.
So it would be everything I see and everything I don't see. Every once in a while.
So I just got 3 weeks, every time I rotate my arm and it twinges, I get to know that that's carnal mind. So I get really good. I don't have to set my timer. All I do is move my arm, and I get to know, well, that's carnal mind. And it is, it's the meek mind, see?
If you say everything I see is carnal mind, does it also have to do with your experiences? Your everyday, your day-to-day interactions as well, not just physical. And could you also say everything I see is an illusion or a lie?
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever word you want to use. Hypnosis, whatever you want to use.
The letter I in that sentence is both capital or small I.
It's the human sense.
Oh, so a small I?
Yeah, everything that's perceived through my eyeballs.
Okay. But I could be in my kingdom and look at this world.
If you can, as long as you're not using your eyeballs, if you're using your eyeballs and seeing carnal mind.
Okay.
If it's coming in through your carnal mind. Let's get quiet. Yes, what?
Next Monday is Halloween, are we having fun?
Absolutely.
You're going costumes, we come in costumes?
Yeah, bring a costume, wear a costume. Dress like your carnal mind.
Carnal mind.
Dress like this carnal mind illusion of yourself.
I'll come as you, Christy. Okay, you come as me.
Well, to see if we can tell that you did that. Let's get quiet. I think we're done with this class. Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing what this does. See you next week. Thanks for coming. Love you all.